Hi, and welcome to the Silicon Insider podcast. Hey, Scott, how are you?
Good, Mike. Good to see you.
It's like an early summer around here. All the hillsides are dried out, and I just came back from Oregon where everything's green and everything here is blasted white. So it's going to be a long summer.
Yeah, it's been beautiful so far, though. Goodness, just so nice to get out, walk around. It's great.
So let's get to the news. I think that, there's a lot going on, but I think the most interesting one, it was an announcement that basically today on Thursday that OpenAI, Sam Altman has cut a deal with iPhone designer Jony Ive to make AI-enabled devices. Hardware. I mean, OpenAI is going into hardware. There's not a lot of successful software companies that crossed over into hardware. I mean, they got the guy. They've signed on the legend. I mean, Ivy's, he invented he didn't invent, but he designed the iPhone. So if anybody can pull this off, these will all be AI enabled devices. What do you think? Can they do this?
I really wonder what this is going to be like. I mean, there has never been a product designer with the reputation of Jony Ive, simply full stop. Legendary. Apple, and you mentioned that it's rare for software companies to make good hardware. It kind of goes both ways. And that's why Apple's success is so extraordinary. You had him designing the iPhone and many other Apple products to be hardware success stories. And then the software on top of it, the app store of it all, it just became a huge success, obviously. But think of all the other software companies that have tried to do hardware. And for the most part, you've got your occasional Xbox here and there, but for the most part, it just hasn't worked. Software companies do software really well. Hardware companies do hardware. AI has been, for the most part, you've got your chips and everything, but it's been a software product. OpenAI does it perhaps better than anyone. The idea that they're getting into hardware, we'll see if they can do it well. I always thought that OpenAI would be sort of like the Microsoft of
Yes,
AI, and that
absolutely.
all the hardware companies, starting with Apple, would want to be partnering with them. The idea that they've bought Jony Ive's company for billions of dollars is crazy, but it just shows you how much money has gone into this AI technology before we've shown that it can even be profitable.
Well, let me ask you a couple questions that arise in my mind. One of them is Ivy's golden moment was 25 years ago. He's an older guy now. He's very wealthy. He's celebrated. Does he have the fire in the belly to do this again? I mean, you look at Raymond Loewy. That's kind of the last guy, the last great designer that we still celebrate, the Studebakers and the locomotives and the telephone. But as he got older, he lost interest and started handing it off to other people. Ivy's even more celebrated and even wealthier than Lowy was. Does he have it in him to still do this stuff?
That's a very fair question. And we don't know because as of you and I talking right now, we haven't seen it. And I don't think we will until sometime in 2026. The rumors are already online of what this piece of hardware might look like, somewhere between an Amazon Alexa and that AI pin that was unsuccessful not too long ago.
Yeah.
And you just wonder, it was interesting when the deal was announced, Apple shares fell as if to say, could this take over from the iPhone? I am skeptical about that too. But all good questions, all fair questions. Sam Altman, although wealthy, is still young and obviously hungry for success to build AI into a consumer product. But you're right, Jony Ive has had already incredible success, multi-continental. He's world famous. He's
Right.
super wealthy. And I don't know that he has to have a success here to define himself, certainly. So I don't know where it goes, but there's
Well, it's
it's a
fun.
really interesting idea. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, next question. Shouldn't Altman be sticking to his knitting this early on in the AI revolution? Shouldn't he be perfecting his product as opposed to going off on some sort of hobby? It reminds me of Facebook, Meta, and the suddenly moving into this hardware and all sorts of, the whole metaverse instead of sticking to their knitting. And ultimately, they had to get back to what they were good at.
Right. And that's also a fair question. I mean, Meta, remember they had a phone. There was a Facebook phone. The hardware stuff is hard to do for software companies. But in Sam Altman's defense, AI is moving really, really rapidly across the globe. And he might be thinking, I could just wait for every last iteration of what OpenAI does to show up on an iPhone or a
Yeah.
Samsung phone or some sort of Android device, or he sees the future, and give him credit, he's seen the future so far, and he might be thinking we really just want to, I don't know, interact with a device, talk with an AI powered device. The cryptic nature of the video that he and Jony Ive put out is purposely cryptic. That's what it's there to do, is to sort of stir up our imaginations.
We'll show you something a year from now, I think was the final message.
Right. And it's too early to know, but I can see how if Sam Altman thinks hardware is going to be important somewhere down the line, what better time than the present?
Yeah, you can preempt some of the competition. Okay, so last question. This is a philosophical one. Ivy worked very well in the environment that Steve Jobs had created. And Apple during the Jobs era was probably the last great giant company that actually took risk. Jobs demanded a risk-taking environment. He punished you if you came in with an idea that wasn't innovative enough. And a guy like Ivy thrived in that. Now he's the boss of his company and he's working with another guy. Does Altman have that style that he's willing to take gigantic leaps to create whole new categories?
So far, the answer is yes.
Yeah.
We've seen it with OpenAI and the wealth that has come in from companies like Microsoft, not to mention other VCs and investors. He seems to have the mantle right now as Silicon Valley's wonderkind.
Yeah.
And so I'm not surprised that not only is the investment money pouring in, but the designers, if he says, I want to design something that's hardware specific for this AI revolution I'm helping to create.
Yeah, if he starts wearing a black turtleneck, well, no.
Yeah, that could be in his future. He says, I only dress one way every day. Who knows? But it just makes sense for the designers of the world, the Jony Ives of the world, to say, this is who I want to link my creative wagon to, because he is the new thing in Silicon Valley leadership.
Okay, let's move on to Google. Google had a cut. Well, let's do the stock market first. The market looked good this week. NASDAQ was up. And then as the administration's new bill, the tax bill and all that it passed through the House, all of a sudden the market went, uh-oh, we're looking at a whole bunch of new debt. And it slid. Basically, as we're talking in after hours trading, the market, which was pretty good this week because it looked like the stock bonds were stabilizing and NASDAQ was rising. But in after hours tonight, it looks like it's a bloodbath. What do you think about that? Is that we going to see that Friday morning? Is that going to be what it's going to be for the next few weeks? I know you don't predict the stock market, but you get a sense of that there's a fear that we're going to take on too much debt.
I'm not too worried. I don't think Wall Street is either. I mean, the futures, it's Thursday night as you and I talk, and the Dow futures are actually a little bit higher. S&P futures a little bit higher. This is after a day where stocks were kind of mixed. The Dow was down like 1 point. Very little reaction to anything out of Washington. And that seems to have been the way. The market seems to fear the elevated treasuries. It seems to fear tariffs. But this tax bill, I think, is still a little early. It's getting some approval, but it hasn't passed yet. And interestingly, some of the things from the state and local tax perspective, even the AI perspective, are getting pushback from both sides of the aisle. And it's been a while, I'd say, since TikTok, that both Democrats and Republicans have agreed on anything. But the idea that there should be no AI guardrails, that makes, both Republicans and Democrats a little nervous. So I think there's still some talking to be done. And therefore, the market seems little changed and not all that worried about the bill yet.
Well, it's an interesting question. If the bill passes, then the market may respond because they're worried about increased debt. But if it doesn't pass, then the original Trump tax breaks won't go through, and the market may also respond negatively to that because the middle class is going to get hit really hard with added taxes.
Right. The reason in Trump's first administration that stocks did well was because wealthy investors were protected. And it seems like there's a lot in this bill to protect the wealthy and to enrich the wealthy who tend to buy stocks. So again, right now, we're not seeing all that much activity. Stocks moderately higher or moderately lower, but pretty flat on this. But I wonder if they might react to the wealthy getting some more tax breaks as they did back in 2016 and 2017, which was to accelerate growth in the stock market. And it's a little early to know, but so far the market seems to be in kind of a wait and see pattern.
Yeah, it looks like it. Okay, let's get on to Google because we have two items for Google. Let's do the fun one first, and that's Google's AI smart glasses. And I'm reading some comments. I guess it was Sergey who pointed out that he knows where the Google glasses failed originally. It was basically his project, and he essentially said we blew it. Mistakes, I think was his phrase. That was back in 2013. That was a dozen years ago. And now the new glasses are coming out. I guess they've got a deal with Ray-Ban and Warby Parker and for this Android XR headset. You think it's going to work this time? I mean, it struck me there were some philosophical problems, practical problems with these glasses, and not just they didn't look good and they might create situations that you didn't want to create, that sort of thing. Do you think they got it right this time? I mean, should they be trying? I know Apple's trying to create some glasses too, but what do you think?
I think they've got it a lot more right. But remember, they're not the first to have this sort of Warby Parker sunglasses that look cool aesthetic. Meta did that. And Meta, for all of its big Oculus headsets that look chunky and that are heavy, I've tried them. I've also tried the Ray-Bans, and they feel just like Ray-Bans. And these Warby Parkers, I was covering the Google I/O event this week where they introduced them. And it's like, this just makes more sense. Meta showed them off. Now Google is showing them off. Apparently, Apple is working on a pair. And if we're going to have cameras and screens and maybe AI and speakers in our glasses, I think this is how they have to look. They just have to look like glasses. To me, they're not as effective as the earbuds as far as making phone calls or listening to your music. But if you are going to wear a pair of glasses and have them powered with this stuff, they shouldn't look like the Vision Pro. That's just too big and bulky. They shouldn't look like Oculus. They certainly shouldn't look like Google Glass. That was an exercise in how to be creepy at a bar. I think these are the form factor that, if anything is going to work, it's going to look like a pair of Ray-Bans, and why not?
So you can be simultaneously Buddy Holly and the smartest guy in the room. Is that the plan?
I guess so. At least it just looks like you're wearing glasses. That said, if you're filming somebody, you really owe it to them. I mean, come on. There are laws against this stuff about just filming people without their permission. This is something I deal with every day in my job. You really need to say, hey, I'm here and I want to take this video. And that's something that we as a society are just going to have to get used to, because if someone is holding up their phone and filming you. But the problem with Google Glass is you really didn't know if someone was walking in and maybe recording you without your permission. And that's creepy and wrong.
So you have to carry a pocket full of releases?
Well, or just not film people without their permission.
Yeah, well, that's not going to happen. That's the first thing that's going to show up on X is all these videos.
Right, but that really doomed Google Glass
Yeah.
because there were literally signs outside bars back in 2013 and 2014 that had Google Glass circle slash and said these are not acceptable here. You can't wear them. And that was simply not the law. That was just public pressure saying we don't want these. They make people uncomfortable.
Yeah, I remember that one. Okay, and now Google has also announced a new uh, AI product for search, a super powered one. Apparently, that will actually show you how this where the search is going and where it's looking, and provide you answers. It'll actually construct the reply to you in real time that you can watch it and see where it's going on. Is this a big deal, or is this just I mean, it's called AI mode, which is sort of confusing because there's a lot of other products out there with mode or something related to it. You think this is a workable idea? I mean, it seems useful, but I'm not struck that this is a world shaker.
No, I'm not sure. I mean, Google really changed the world with search, and now it wants to change the world of search. I don't know that you need to see how the sausage is made when you want some information, but Google's Gemini and its other AI products have been proven to deliver AI results quickly in their search engines, on your phone, on your laptop, maybe in the future on Sam Altman and Jony Ive's device. Who knows? I just think people want fast answers. And really, Google launched that several years ago and has been doing it since. The question is, can it make money on it? I know they announced some subscription type services. I don't know who's going to sign up for that, but I do know that Google has been good with Gemini at getting people their search results quickly when they just talk to their phone or type into a search thing, whatever. But who knows how long the search bar will still be a thing if we're just going to ask Gemini or OpenAI or whatever to give us an answer.
Yeah, we heard from that Apple executive predicting that this might be an existential thing for search and thus Google as the world's leader in search. That if AI becomes sufficiently powerful and effective, why do you need search? It'll search for you and it'll do everything. So, I mean, it is this a sufficiently important move by Google to protect it from that fate? Do they
Yeah,
really have a
that's
killer app that will get us to go, oh, well, I'm going to stick with Google because, it does a better job.
there seem to be a lot of executives and certainly investors who think so. Google was stagnating for a little bit there as people said, hey, is AI and its ability to get these quick answers going to damage Google's search product and therefore the way that Google makes all of this money? And then in the span of a day and really the span of a Sundar Pichai keynote, when it talked about all of these AI functions and advances, Google stock went way up, even on a down day for stocks, and people were all of a sudden very optimistic about Google's prospects to
Mhm.
somehow turn this into revenue. And that remains to be seen, but if anyone can do it, why not Google?
Yeah, I mean, if anyone's going to do it, let's see how lively and energetic Google still is. I mean, it's becoming a very old company in Valley time. Let's see if they too have the fire in the belly. Finally, we got to get into this one. Uh, this week was the billion-dollar pizza week for cryptocurrency. Apparently, 15 years ago today, or this week, uh, a guy named Laszlo Hanyecz, he bought two Papa John's pizzas for delivery, and he paid it with Bitcoin. He paid it with 10,000 Bitcoin. Well, they've computed what that would be worth today, especially since Bitcoin just went through the roof this week. Um, it comes out to $1.1 billion. The most expensive pizza delivery of all time. Um, it's a real measure of how far Bitcoin and the others, cryptocurrencies have come. That I think Bitcoin broke $111,000 this week.
Yeah.
Yeah, uh, it it really is there to stay, and it seems to have changed the world. I mean, it happened weirdly and slowly, and we had trouble believing it could be real, but it's real.
Right. And it seems strange to say that Bitcoin has this staying power, but people really have held on to it and have watched it grow, even as other cryptocurrencies have proven to be everything from fraudulent to non-existent to just
Yeah.
absolute grifts. Bitcoin has stayed really, really strong and just gotten stronger. And, obviously it's a fool's errand to try to guess where it goes from here, but it is kind of significant that in all this time, those who have stuck with it, like they've stuck with a growing company that turns into an all-star stock, have really, really been rewarded.
Yeah, unfortunately, not Laszlo.
Well, who knows if he kept some? You never know.
Yeah, I hope so. Can we almost take off crypto off the front of the term? I mean, is this now a real established world currency?
Well, remember, the crypto people would tell you that crypto is still the headline because of what it stands for as far as different than fiat, all that stuff. So I don't know where they would stand on that. But Bitcoin on its own has been so much stronger than the other cryptocurrencies and coins that have been really shams and have brought a lot of uh, understandably shame to the whole crypto world. And if I were a true advocate of this, which I'm not, but if I were of Bitcoin, I would really stop talking about the other stuff as anything legitimate and just try to point out the value of what I've held. Because, from the White House on down, the idea that these coins are of any value is shameful and ridiculous. Whereas Bitcoin, to its absolute credit, has risen and fallen and stayed strong and is now, as you and I speak, at an all-time high. Somewhat bafflingly, but at the same time, you got to hand it to them. They've held and made a lot of money.
It's an interesting alternate history theory that if BRICS, the unaffiliated nations, third world nations, what do you want to call them, if they had adopted, they were searching for a counter to the U.S. dollar and to the euro dollar phenomenon. If they had chosen Bitcoin as their currency, that could have been hugely successful in breaking the control of the U.S. dollar.
True. And I wonder if we're not going to test that theory with all these tariffs and the way that our dollar right now is starting to lose some of its sheen. And does that mean some of the traditional safe haven investment will go into things like Bitcoin, which means we may have to use the terms safe haven and Bitcoin in the same sentence. What a world.
Which would be ironic, yes.
What a world, yeah.
Okay, that's it for now, folks. You can find us on Spotify, Anchor, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. You can see Scott on Facebook and X, and of course, almost every weeknight on NBC Bay Area, and hear me regularly on the BBC radio show Business Matters. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.